welcome everyone this morning. We are really excited today about today's announcements. There's a lot of information we'll go over here in just a moment. But before we get the ball rolling, one of the things we always do at any of our program is to open up with prayer. So at this time, I would like to invite Randy Johnson up to the podium for prayer. Randy?
Thank you, Donovan, and let's bow and pray. God, thank you again for your presence, for it brings to us strength and peace. We thank you for the many other gifts to us, that of curiosity and ingenuity, and that important, deep desire to help each other. Thank you today for the gift of Hilda and her presence, what she brings to us in so many ways. Bless this time and this space with great joy, and may our cups overflow that others may benefit. Amen.
Again, Randy, thank you. And before we get started with the program, I would like to introduce a couple of our guests here today. We certainly have a wonderful attendance here today, and again, really exciting times as you listen to some of not only this program, but how it kind of connects with some of the things that we're working with here at Pikeville Medical. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to announce that we've got several groups here today, and so that I don't leave everybody out, I'm going to kind of introduce you as groups. So if you don't mind, if you would stand to be recognized, I would greatly appreciate that. We have several representatives here today with Reed Atkins and the Pike County School Board. If you don't mind, would you please at least raise your hand or stand to be recognized? Again, welcome. Thank you. Reed's a dear friend, and as you'll hear here in just a moment, a lot of this project really started with a conversation between us and Reed and what we can do to really help healthcare and well-being throughout our region, and more specifically in Pike County. But we also have another great partner that has worked with us on so many different projects, including this one. But we have several members of the Pikeville Independent School Board also present. If you don't mind, if you'd raise your hand and be acknowledged. And once again, we appreciate all that you do and your commitment to the youth of our area. So thank you so much. We have a couple of members of also the Pikeville City Commission. We have Mayor Jimmy Carter here today. Jimmy, as always, is a huge proponent of not only healthcare and well-being, but a Pikeville Medical Center and doing so many wonderful things for our community. Jimmy, again, welcome you. And I see Steve's also with you today. And Philip, the city manager, is right behind him. So y'all different rows for some reason. I don't know if that was by design or how, but again, I greatly appreciate you, Mayor and Steve, and all that you do for our community. And then also, thank you. Yeah, they deserved an applause, absolutely. I've known Jimmy for longer than I'd like to mention, and it's hard for me still yet to give him applause, Jim. But I'm just joking. Jimmy's great, good friend, and does great things for our community. We appreciate y'all coming out. And then also we have my good friend and my neighbor, Keith Hall, Pike County Attorney here today. Keith's another one of those, as I look into the audience, is always here to support Pikeville Medical, and Keith, appreciate the work you do and things. That's what I like. Hope for the latter. A little way off, okay? And then I'm going to kind of give dual credit to showing up because he had to, but we also have the mayor of our neighboring city of Coal Run, Mayor Andrew Scott, here today, but he had to be here today because he's also an employee. So, but we. Again, outside of his commitment to Pikeville Medical Center, has been fully committed and seen so much progression in the city of Coal Run. So, Mayor, Andrew, I'll call you both. Great job. Is there any elected officials outside, I'm going to recognize my board members here in a member. We've got several members, as I said, from appointed to several positions, and I can't thank you enough for coming out. It's on cue, as you hear the background. Trying to let it roll over so it doesn't pick up on the mic. Again, I think it's getting closer. You know, a lot of the work that we've done here, well, before I go there, is there anyone I haven't recognized in the audience that is either an appointed or an elected official? If I have, I've missed you, my sincere apologies, but I certainly, once again, appreciate everyone for coming out and your support, not only for what we're getting ready to announce today, but also for so many investments that have been made over both a long and a short period of time. You know, as I introduce my guest here in a few moments, who is associated directly with USDA and RD, when you look at this magnificent building, and if you look at their footprint, is left throughout our entire region in so many different ways from the standpoint of development, economic prosperity, and opportunity. And in this case, time and time again, investments that helps with things like education and well-being, and so many other items that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But, you know, one of the things that I'm very proud of is, you know, I've had the opportunity now to serve a little over 2 years, 2.5 years now with Pikeville Medical. And I've been blessed to work with 3,000, as I keep calling them, superstars, outstanding ambassadors that represents health and well-being for our entire region. It's been my distinct pleasure to do so. But in that time frame, looking at all the accomplishments and the investments to really promote health and well-being for our community has been so vast, and things that oftentimes when we put them on a piece of paper, you don't recognize or realize the work that's been done in such a short period of time. And it's been done through amazing and wonderful leadership. And leadership, again, that I'm proud not only to call my board of directors, but also my friends. So under the leadership of our president, Ron Burchett, we have several board members here today too. And so I don't have to name all your names off. If you all don't mind, would you please stand up and be recognized, because you all have done absolutely an amazing job. And I asked them to stand and be recognized because, again, I've said this time and time again, that these are unpaid positions. These are positions that are serving their community, and several of you have done it for so many years in so many different ways that this community is certainly indebted to what you have done to advance not only Pikeville Medical Center, but the quality of care that this institution has delivered and continues to deliver over the years and going forward. So thank you for your commitment and contribution to the community and Pikeville Medical Center. Thank you. So now let's talk about the program today. And what our executive team was off-site this week talking about areas that we need to make improvements, advancements, and concentrate on. And oh, Bob, I should have also said you're a Pikeville City Commissioner too. Just looked up, you're hard to miss. So I put him in two categories too. Bob Shirtwood, Pikeville City Commissioner. My apologies. It happens. Depends on what pod you're sitting in. But, you know, we were having this meeting this past week, and we were talking about areas that we need to really concentrate on. And one of the areas that continue to rise is to the top that, Jody, we, as you know, have been working on for a long period of time is our pediatric business over the last at least 22 months since that the board was kind enough to put me in this position. So we've done quite a bit to really address the needs of our pediatric population. Just last week, for example, we received notification that our CON was approved, board, surprise, was officially approved, adding 8 additional NICU beds. On top of the 8 beds that we currently have, this will take us to 16 beds, which is an absolutely wonderful accomplishment. Understand what that means, is that the CON beds, once that they are formally approved, they've been approved, but they got to go through, Eric tells me, a different process that will probably take around March. But once that everything is official, we will be certified with those 8 additional beds as a level 2 NICU center. This will allow us to treat babies at the 28-week gestation period versus what we currently treat, which is at 32 weeks. Will also allow us to treat babies of 1,200 grams of birth weight or babies that are required to be on a ventilator for over a 24-hour period. Instead of sending our kids away or our babies away, because of this announcement, we're able to keep our kids home, which is where they need to be with their parents in their own community, not placing additional unneeded hardships at a time that's supposed to be a very happy time in their life. So I'm extremely appreciative for all those that worked to get us through the CON process. It's a huge accomplishment. On top of that, PMC also employs several pediatricians along with our OBGYNs. We have a wonderful relationship with most of our pediatric physicians in our community who are also licensed or able, has privileges here at Pikeville Medical Center. Also, we have our own neonatologist on staff. When you combine all these aspects into one, this is why so many mothers choose PMC as their hospital choice when they're bringing their newborn into the world. PMC simply provides peace of mind, knowing that we are the best equipped hospital in the region, and more important, as I mentioned before, we're able to keep babies and mothers and families together. Just a few weeks ago also, through the hard work of Lisa Estep and several others, we received a grant through COSAIR, which allows us to purchase a new state-of-the-art draft care station for our ED. What a wonderful piece of equipment to introduce to our pediatric patients. And when you're speaking of our emergency department, we also received a designation through our emergency department certifying us of 1 of 4 hospitals in the state of being pediatric ready hospital. This is thanks to our wonderful emergency department staff and leadership. We're involved in a project that will allow us to construct a series of pediatric-friendly rooms as well in the ED. We're working currently on a couple of granting agencies and have been getting the nod that more than likely that this funding will come through. But even if it doesn't, we're committed to, again, taking several rooms and making them pediatric-friendly so that when a child comes into the emergency department, they're not overwhelmed. They're in a friendly environment with a table that could look like an elephant, colorful pictures on the walls, and again, just really taking the stress out of a visit. So by the middle of this year, our intent is to have that up and running as well. Our plans are also to develop and to construct a new children's hospital. This could not be possible without our good friends in both the state and in all sincerity and honesty through the support and leadership of Congressman Hal Rogers. Because of the AML program, these funds have now become available, and we're simply waiting for these funds through the federal government so that we can actually start construction. The design has been completed, and we're ready to lay mortar and foundation. Our executive team, as I mentioned, met the last 2 days, and one of our priority projects for the upcoming year is to also work on expanding occupational therapy offerings for pediatric patients. Though there's still a little work to be done, we're committed to doing so. We continue to work with our high schools, our technical schools, and our state leadership and federal leadership partners to create a pathway for students to pursue healthcare degrees. And with Pikeville Medical Center, there is certainly no shortfall in job placement. We also continue to work with our state and federal agencies to continue with advancement in healthcare and well-being for our region. We had the great partnership and will continue a partnership with Congressman Rogers and Leader McConnell on many different programs, and I certainly look forward to working with Governor Beshear on many of our ongoing projects. I'm extremely excited for today's announcement because when you couple everything that we talked about today and you put it in a package, there's one piece that's somewhat missing, and that's our outreach. So today's announcement will allow us to continue our mission with providing world-class health care for the youth of our region through this new method of delivery. The second reason I'm really excited is because I get the pleasure of introducing a dear friend of mine. Over the past 17 years and 14 years that I spent as city manager, I had the pleasure and great opportunity of getting to know Hilda. I think they're doing this on purpose to me. Hilda is the State Director for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Without USDA and PMC, certainly would not be who we are today. We value and respect our relationship with USDA and all they have done for PMC in our region. As I mentioned, their footprint is throughout our entire area. Hilda was appointed by President Trump's administration in November 2017, where she started her career as a school teacher in Adair County schools before serving in the Ronald Reagan's Department of Education. She went on to serve in various capacities focused on rural economic development under both the Bush's administration. She also served as the first executive director and CEO at the Center for Rural Development in Somerset, Kentucky. Hilda was also a small business owner in the telecommunication industry. I've known her to be a huge advocate for progress for all Kentuckians. I honestly, when the announcement was made back in November 17, could not think of a better person for this position. I'm so proud of her many accomplishments, and again, I'm honored to call her my dear friend. I give you Hilda Lake.
He just wants another grant, you all. Don't you know that? Oh, good afternoon. Thank you, Donovan, for that very kind introduction. And Randy, I always appreciate prayers. We all need them every day. So thank you for being here and doing that for us. And good afternoon. All right, that's pretty good. Good afternoon. All right, it's a great afternoon in Pikeville, Kentucky, is it not? It's always a good afternoon, I guess, in Pikeville, Kentucky, but the weather outside is like springtime, right? And I'm just hoping that the winter maybe just is already gone and over. But I am delighted to be here. I couldn't be more excited about what we are announcing today. And yes, I officially bring you greetings from President Trump and Secretary Perdue. But I've got to tell you, I want you to know how well known you are in the halls of Washington bureaucracy. About a year or so ago, I was bringing my boss, the Undersecretary for Rural Development, to Kentucky. And the staff in D.C. were telling her, you've got to have Hilda take you to Pikeville. Because if you go to Pikeville, you will see where rural development has helped transform the entire look of downtown Pikeville, Kentucky. When you look at the medical center here, you look at the college at UPike with the osteopathic and then the optometry building, and we just continue to be partners with you and grow. So you are known as a wonderful example of how USDA's rural development can partner with local communities and help make those rural communities stronger. And that is our purpose at Rural Development. And yes, it's great fun to come and make announcements, but day in and day out, our motivation by the staff at Kentucky's offices and across our Commonwealth is how do we have partnerships? And so to the board, I want to say to you all, thank you so much for allowing Donovan and Lisa to try these new endeavors and to come to us and say, hey, we think we'd like to do that. Can you help us? Because it takes your support and your leadership to allow them to explore opportunities such as this one today. And I hope this is just the first one that we're going to be announcing today right here for the medical center. When I first got involved in telemedicine and technology, and I'm a huge proponent of high-speed broadband connectivity, Philip Elder and the mayor and I have had many conversations about that. And so when I talk about that, you know, sometimes we get caught up in fiber and speed and all of that. But let me tell you what it's really about. It's really about what you do at the end of that line. And so to the superintendents and school people that I'm here, thank you for being here and participating. When I taught school, technology back then, we had one television. And so we had to roll it from room to room, right? And I don't know anybody else old enough to remember that, but that was our technology, was a TV. And we thought we were, you know, in high cotton then. But one of the first examples of what we're talking today in terms of telemedicine was we had placed one of these connectivities in a rural clinic. And I know you all are branching out, so this is something to think about, right? It's a very rural clinic. Well, what's the first thing that happens when a baby is born? And I loved hearing about all the emphasis that you're putting on the NICU center and all of our children, because that's ultimately our future. And this baby was born and it had a cardiac problem. Immediately they realized that. Well, the first thing we tend to do is put them in a vehicle and transport them to the regional facility, closest regional facility. Because they had a telemedicine connection from that rural clinic, they were able to hook that clinic and the monitors and everything to the baby's heart. They connected to a cardiac pediatrician, and that cardiac pediatrician said, do not move that baby. It has to be stabilized for 48 hours before, and told them all the things that they needed to do to get that baby stable before they transported it. And that is life-saving. And that is dramatic, but that is what technology can do for us when we put it in the right places with the proper hands. And so today, we're here to announce a very nice award for distance learning and telemedicine. The total project is $456,117, but the good news about that is $357,167 is going to Pikeville Medical Center for its telemedicine project. Give them a big round of applause. It will have mobile telehealth carts, exam cameras, and equipment to connect to Pikeville Medical Center from our schools. Now, I remember my school nurse. Mine was a big former Army nurse, right? And when she gave you an injection in the Army, you knew it and you felt it, right? But we had school nurses, because I went out to a little rural center school in Adair County. And so we have seen health care in our rural centers, our rural schools, dwindle because of the cost of health care. We know nurses are a great shortage in Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky. And so what we are able to do with this connectivity is maintain a level of nurse care and expertise in our schools, but for acute situations or just a backup situation, they can connect to the medical center. You know, our children today, they deserve everything we as adults can give them. They're growing up in a world much different than we did. Many of them don't have a decent breakfast or a decent meal until they get to school to get something to eat. They don't have food when they go home. Our schools have an extra burden of sometimes being mother and father and grandparents to them today. And so my heart goes out to those of you that are in the education business. It's different than it was when I started a number of years ago. But because of this connectivity, we are going to be able to bring the expertise of the medical center here to our schools. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we at Kentucky's Rural Development Office are so excited about this announcement, and we hope that we'll have more applications in the future. When Donovan mentioned it and Lisa called me and we worked through some of the details of it and my staff worked on it together, we have to go up and compete nationally. This isn't money that I hold in Frankfurt. In Lexington, some of the monies we do have, but this is money that's held in Washington. This project went to Washington, competed across the nation for the money that was invested for the projects to go, and you all were successful. You did a great job with your team, your staff. Again, another round of applause. I think you have 10 schools that are participating in this. I'm correct on that. That'll be linked in at some point. That's what my notes say. So if yours say differently, don't tell me. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is that since 2017, we have put $4 million, our rural development funds, right here in Kentucky for this kind of connectivity. It's called distance learning and telemedicine. So again, to the education institutions, we can connect you with other institutions, to the osteopathic school, to the Cleveland Clinic, again, in terms of teaching criteria and teaching lessons and teaching courses that you aren't able to afford a teacher that is certified in that. We have one of our DLTs in Iowa that is teaching Mandarin Chinese because they have a company there that has Chinese base. And so the school has taken on the opportunity to educate its students in that through our distance learning connectivity in order to create that workforce to go into that business. So it's a matter of how creative that we can be and then competing for these funds, doing it correctly, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and of course coming up with the match that you had to make this project workable. In Kentucky, Donathan mentioned I came in with the Trump administration. Rural development, a lot of times you know us for our water projects or for the buildings, the bricks and mortar that we have around the city of Pikeville. But we have put over $2.3 billion in 3 years. $2.3 billion have been invested into Kentucky's rural development projects. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is your tax dollar, your money that you send to Washington that we try to bring back to our constituents and our Kentuckians because we know they deserve it. Of that, we have put $12.3 million right here in Pike County in the last 3 years. That's over $12 million. This morning, again, I had some meetings, and let me tell you, I'm going back to Lexington with a list of about 5 other things, at least, that the mayor's office and the water folks, other people, Mr. May, they have said they want to do. And I bet you I get another item added to that list before I get out of here today. That's why we exist. We exist as rural development in order to help you access those government programs and bring that investment back home to rural communities. And let me tell you why. Donathan mentioned the fact that I've been involved in rural development for most all of my career ever since I left teaching in the Department of Education in Washington. The reason is because I believe those fundamental values that we grew up with, that I grew up with, that you all are privileged if you grew up in this area, that sense of pride in your community, that sense of taking care of one another, looking out for one another, our belief in a higher being, that there's a purpose for each and every one of us here on this earth, that sense of sharing, and that when rising tide raises all boats, when one of us does well, we help the other one do well. You see, that ability and that desire to protect our country, our rural communities have always given of our military to our military, its very best and brightest young men and women. Those fundamental values of growing up in rural Kentucky, in rural Pike County, those values are not just important to us, but those values are what makes America great. So when rural Kentucky is strong, America is strong. Thank you for letting me be a part of this celebration today.
What great news. Hilda, again, I can't thank you enough. And, I was sitting there thinking, if you recall, well back over a year ago, really the first time that I had seen someone of your position actually come out into our community and ask for a meeting. So at her request, she came down and sat in my office and basically said, what do we need to advance this area? And we started talking about various projects. So again, speaks to who you are, what you represent, and what you mean to our part of the state and the country for that matter. So I cannot thank you enough for all that you do. When you think about pediatric services, when you look at our area, we have around, in our service area, 100,000 pediatric patients that could be patients, I should say, between the age of 0 and 18. So 100,000 pediatrics in our population. Out of that 100,000, we saw over 25,000 pediatric patients, again, between the ages of 0 and 18 in our clinics last year. Of that, we saw around 3,500 of those patients come through our emergency department. So having a platform such as this, Reed, to be able to be in the school systems where the furthest school out could be almost a 45-minute, hour drive is extremely important for our children, and specifically for the caliber of care that both the school systems, both the independent and the county schools want. And I apologize that I'm going to do this because I won't say that I promised that I didn't. And to Hilda's point, there is 10 schools that were in the project. However, through an intercooperative effort, we're going to make sure that every school in Pike County, both the independent and the county, has this system. So when you,
My list was going to grow, right?
which leads to my next comment. So we started with the elementary schools because you have to start somewhere. And when you look at the youngest and those that are at the highest risk because they sometimes can't help themselves, we felt that this was the best area to make our first investment. But we don't want to stop from there. We want to pursue next year or as we get, because our hope and intent is hopefully by the opening of the new school year that this will actually be in place. There's a lot of work to be done. It's an aggressive plan, but we certainly hope to be able to hit that. And then after that, again, our second phase would be looking at the high schools to be able to roll this technology out so that every school in our service area and certainly within the county has this technology. But the other piece of this, and I'm going to ask Reed to clean anything up that I say wrong because oftentimes targets move. But just for clarity as well is that the question was asked when we started to announce this even internally, does this mean that we're pulling the RNs out of the school and only supplementing or putting telehealth in? And the answer is no. The school systems are still committed to keeping the RNs in. This is supplemental, so that as advanced care is needed, that there is a mechanism in place that if you're a student 45 minutes away, that you can log into a system and have a primary care physician or a pediatrician on the other end at one of our clinics at Pikeville Medical Center to be able to offer that service. That is huge, folks, for our area. So I appreciate all of those that are here with both the independent and the Pike County school system and your commitment to improving the quality of life for our students and our kids. You know, as a father and a grandfather, as you mentioned, growing up, not having the opportunities of this type of technology and seeing patients at times not get the care that they're needed when they need it, this is going to remove those hurdles. So again, I'm extremely excited and very appreciative for the announcement and look forward to where we're heading. So I'm going to ask both the city and the county, is there anything that I've said that needs to be said? Did I cover it all? Close enough? Okay, good. Certainly, my intent was not to speak on their behalf because we are truly all partners in this endeavor and so many others. And these are, again, folks, whether they're appointed or elected, that are serving our great community. And then when we have partnerships coming out of Washington and out of the state that sees the need and are willing to make additional investments for, again, the advancement, well-being, and health care and so many other ways of rural development and what they've done to improve the quality of life, we cannot say thank you enough. So again, Hilda, I'm going to ask you to come back up. She's got a presentation, and then we'll take a few photos, and then we'll talk to the press.
I do, and I don't know if you all remember it or not, but a number of years ago, we used to bring those big checks. Do y'all remember that? We used to bring those water checks and all those big checks. Well, we don't bring big checks anymore, but what I couldn't let this opportunity go by without saying to Pikeville Medical Center how much we appreciate their partnerships. That money can sit in Washington, D.C. That money can go to other states and other communities across the country. But that money, that $300 and some thousand grant money, your tax dollar money, came back here because the leadership at Pikeville Medical Center said, let's try. Let's put an application in. Let's put it together. Let's see what we can do. And by golly, they were successful. So it's a congratulations to Pikeville Medical Center. We commend your commitment to increasing rural access in quality health care. $357,167 for distance learning telemedicine grant funds through your partnership with Kentucky's USDA Rural Development will help equip schools to expand and connect with medical professionals at Pikeville Medical Center. Congratulations, and thank you so much. Are you going to take that? I tell y'all, Donovan is so good that if you notice the welcome sign out there, he knew what I was going to wear today. Did y'all notice that?
We planned that. We called ahead. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out and celebrating today's announcements. And I can't say enough, both from the Pike County school system and the independent school system. We appreciate your partnership and your commitment to the youth of our area. So thank you very much. Before that I bring Randy back up to close us out, there's one more presentation. And as I mentioned, prior to coming to Pikeville Medical Center, I had the great privilege of serving this community for 14 years as Jimmy, the city manager. And there's a lot of folks along the way that have helped really elevate and build Pikeville into what it is today, which is really a shining star and a beacon of hope. And when you deal with so many people in both federal and state government, I truly meant when I said that Hilda is a friend, not just because I've known her for a long time and we played in some of the same sandboxes, but to see her not only elevate, but her passion and her willingness to come to Pikeville, Kentucky and other parts of the state to see what our needs are, that it is a huge advantage and opportunity for us to have a voice in both Frankfort and, more importantly, in Washington, D.C. So, Hilda, once again, thank you. And because of that, I have a plaque that I'd like to present to you. And what the plaque says is to Hilda Legg, U.S. Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, State Director for Kentucky, in sincere appreciation for your dedication and support for health care in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and for Pikeville Medical Center, presented this January the 15th, 2020.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know we were going to do that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're right.
Thank you so much. It's always about working together, folks. Always about working together. You all keep up the good work, and I'll be back anytime we can bring you some more money, okay?
Come back often then. Well, again, this concludes our presentation. I'm going to ask Randy to come up and dismiss us with prayer, please. Randy.
I've been asked to remind you all from schools to please, at the conclusion of prayer, come on up here. They'd like to have some photo opportunities. So don't run away. You won't break the camera. Come on up. Let's pray. We go from here, God, equipped and encouraged, ready to make a positive impact on the world with this news. So bless our great treasure, that is our children, and all that we do for them. Amen.
Thank you, everyone.